What's up, guys? Welcome back to the War Room, and this is another basic tutorial of Grand Tactician, the Civil War. Now, this is just a very basic tutorial. I've been doing this a lot, trying to figure out a lot of the buttons going on here, and so I'm going to try and give you a little idea of what's going on. The buttons down here, the lower part of the screen, they all have their own uses, all right, and so we'll get right into it. So if you don't have anything selected, you'll have this button selection down here. The only thing you can do is build. So you can either build parapets, which is like like sandbags and fences, or breastworks, which is your trench. So think of trench warfare. So if you want to do any of those things, you can't select any of your units. Okay. If you select any of your generals, you have a basic command of all of the units attached to your commander. All right, and that's all the red lines that you see. Any of these broken lines that you see going off here, running off, those are detached units. I'll explain what that is here in a second. We're going to stick with Johnson because Johnson has units of every type, including cavalry. If I click Beauregard, I lose the cavalry. So I'm going to stick with Johnson here. All right, so let's get right into this. So the first button we have here is your AI stance. And these four buttons will give you some kind of action to send to the AI of these units. So, for example, assault. Assault is when you are trying to break a line of your enemy, right? So if you have a group of guys up here, they're going to do everything they can to push the enemy back. Attack is just a general engagement. So if they see somebody, they're going to fight in a normal, standard way. Defense, obviously they're not going to move. They're going to try and stay and defend the area as long as possible. And then you have screen, which basically means they will stay and fight as long as possible. If the units become exhausted or they become the morale becomes too depleted, they will fall back. But they'll only do that if they can no longer stand where they're at. They're not going to take unnecessary losses. So these are buttons that require a courier. So I would suggest that if you are going to defend or attack or assault, you need to select that immediately. Make sure you have that selected beforehand before you run into the enemy. Okay. Next thing is your formations. You have several formations. The first one is attack column, which basically is a big square at the top. So if you're going to do a melee and run into the enemy, this gives your guy a chance to form into a very thick, like just a big old hammer, to the nail. So they're not going to be in a thin line. They're going to get together and they're going to push. All right. Again, couriers are needed, so you need to, act accordingly. March columns. If you're going to go across the battlefield, I would suggest you click this. If you're just going to use roads, don't worry about it. Your units are going to automatically form and follow the roads around. But if you're going to go across the battlefield, then you want to go into columns. The standard is the double line. The double line is basically what we're at right now. Here, so you got. What's this? Bartow, and then you got B. So Bartow and Jackson, they are in the front of the line, and the idea is if one of these guys starts to fall, okay, let's say Bartow starts to get pushed back, you have reserves to come up and take over. Or if Bartow is getting to a point where he's about to break, you can fall him back, and then you can bring reserves up to help. Okay, so that's your, that's your formation for the standard. Then you got the single line. The single line is the most powerful, where it brings every one of these guys up forward, all in one straight line across. Brings every gun to bear. However, if one of your units breaks, then you're going to have holes in your defense. Okay, holes in your line, and that's where they start getting outflanked. You got to be careful. If you have more units than they do, this wouldn't be a bad idea. Successive lines. All right, successive lines are great, especially if you're defending, because then the enemy has to go through all of those lines, wall after wall after wall, and it's good if you have the manpower to do it. If they've got a lot more guys than you, I wouldn't, because you'll just get enveloped in no time. Then you got the refuse left and the refuse right. So in this scenario, I've got Johnson here, and Beauregard. His right would be Walker and Ewell. And Ewell, it's actually more for the infantry. So if the enemy were to come down, say this way, Ewell would actually give way a little bit and bend. So he will bend with the flanking armies to give Jones and Early and Beauregard just a little defensive position. Instead of just standing here and allowing the army to go around and rolling them up, they'll actually bend for you a little bit. Next, we're going to have infantry commands. All right, so infantry commands, excuse me. Obviously, we have our long range, medium range, short range. Long range, they're going to shoot as soon as they can get there within range of the bad guy. Medium range is your standard. It's pretty decent. And then short range is the most powerful of the volleys. However, you have to walk closer to the enemy to get there. That means you're going to suffer probably more losses before they get the shot off. But if they do get the shot off, it's going to be devastating. You got lay down. If your unit, say, your bottom is out in the middle of the open and there are artillery guys pounding down on him, you might want him to lay down until he's either in cover or until you need him. Okay, it's just a modifier to fight against losses. Then you have skirmishers. Let me show you what the skirmishers do really quickly. Okay, here's bottom. All right, let's start them up. So you go to each individual unit and do these. You don't have all of the options. If I hit skirmishers, take a look at that. Okay. And I'll tell you what that is here. So skirmishers are the picket line. They're basically, if you're going to be defending a position, these guys are going to be your sharpshooters, your snipers. These are guys that are going to take shots. And you can tell here, there's your little symbol for skirmishers. They're going to be taking pot shots over at the other regiments to slow them down, to break their morale a little bit. They're by no means an ultimate defense. They're just a way of giving you some time, or they're also quicker because they're a smaller group. They can get around and attack an enemy from a flank. Okay, it's not bad. If you have enough guys in that regiment, then I would suggest doing this whenever you can. Otherwise, I wouldn't. They're also harder to hit because they're more spaced apart. Okay, so when the enemy is shooting at them, these guys can run quicker, they're not attached to a regiment, and they're spaced apart. Okay, let's go back. All right, the next thing that they can do, finally, charge. That's your charge action. You can also do the same thing by, here, let me click bottom. Instead of pressing charge, you can also press Alt, and it changes it to the cross swords. That is your charge, and they will run at the enemy. I would suggest that when you're going to charge, make sure you get as close to the enemy as possible so you don't exhaust your men, and then give them that charge. Okay, charging is a very serious action. It's tactically unsound, but if you know the enemy is almost broken, that charge might actually help you out. Now we're going to go to the cavalry decisions. All right, we got loose order. Okay. Basically what that means is you're going to be fighting in a much more wider apart from the other horses. This is good if you're charging artillery and they're coming at you with artillery. Lay down, same thing. You're going to get down if you can. Same thing for the artillery. Evade. This is great for harassing enemy regiments. They're going to go in. They're going to shoot from horseback, which is very inaccurate, but it's going to harass them. It's going to bring down their morale a little bit. Then they'll run away and come back. Then you got cold steel. Same thing. It's a charge. All right. Mounting. So historically, the way cavalry was used in a Civil War game is here's your cavalry unit right here. They run around and they go up to these guys right here. They park it on a nice hill, get off their horses. In my last video, hold your horses. That there's usually a horse bearer with the group. There's one man for 4 horses. They'd hold the horses. Imagine being in a fight and all you're doing is holding horses. But anyway, they get down, use their rifles. They usually have the best rifles, usually like good reloading, repeaters, and harass the enemy line. Their objective for a cavalry, in all reality, is to slow everything down, slow the enemy from advancing. Okay, excuse me. And then you have scouts, and of course you could break off some scouts, and that's a great way to get an idea of the battlefield long before you even get there, and utilize that. It's something you should utilize. So that's your cavalry, and these orders are all under your general. Okay. Next is your artillery. Artillery always starts off at fire at will, which means fire at anybody that comes within distance. You have limber and unlimbering. Okay, limbering means you're going to attach the guys to their little carts, and the carts are going to take the artillery wherever you need to onto the battlefield. Okay, here, let me give you an example. So like here, these little horses here, they're actually the limbering. They would connect to these, the caissons would connect to the artillery and bring them wherever you want on the field. These guys do not. They're just free. And this needs a little work. I've seen like Garnet, like literally fly around the battlefield wherever I order him to, while Kemper takes forever. So that shouldn't be done. Okay, that should not be done. In Scourge of War, it's done very well. It takes like a long time to limber and unlimber, which is the way it should be. About a minute, a good 30 seconds to a minute, just to limber up. All right. So that's your artillery. Counter battery fire. If you select that, then your artillery is only going to fire enemy artillery. I don't usually use this option. I like my artillery to be used on infantry. I want to break the morale of infantry. That's the name of this game. But if you have more artillery available, then you might select a few of them to do that and just go after enemy artillery and put pressure on them. And then last but not least, I have not seen this. I don't know how this works, but it reminds me of the third day of Gettysburg, the Pickett's Charge, where I think what this means is they bombard. You get all of them together and they bombard a certain place. Okay, I don't know how that works yet. I'm going to have to experiment with that. Next is your commander sections, and this is your initiative. And what initiative means is if I order Johnson to go over here, okay, and a bad guy shows up, units that are within range of that bad guy are going to stop what they're doing and attack him. So if I'm looking to get across the battlefield fast, then I may not want to have the initiative selected. Right now it's selected, so I might want to take that off. Okay, I'll put it back on for now. Okay, next you have roads. If you're going to move your guy around, he's going to use all the available roads. That's these little lines right here. They will use any available roads that they can possibly. That may be good and that may be bad. It just depends on your situation. Next is going to be attach and detach. I'll show you that right now. So here I'll select Beauregard. So the units that have the red solid lines are attached. So when I give an order for Beauregard, all of these units are going to move according to what Beauregard wants. However, Beauregard also has bottom in his group, and it's recognized by a very faint dotted line. He is detached, which means he will not move. Same thing with Kemper, same thing with Garnet, and then there's a couple of guys over here, Koch and Evans. They are not going to do anything. They're just going to sit there. But if I go to bottom, okay, and I go to his commander, and I attach, now you got the solid line. But if you notice in the solid line here, you got this black arrow moving towards bottom. That's the courier. That's showing you that the courier is on his way. Again, everything's courier. So, and there's some mess ups here. Kemper will move automatically for some reason. There's some units that just move, and they really shouldn't. But bottom, he's going to wait for a courier to tell him to attach and to listen to all orders. Okay. Next we have high ground. So if there is a fight, they're going to try and use the hills. You can tell the hills right up here. You see the little ridges. These are where the hills are compared to other places. All right. You got cover. Roads are considered cover. You don't see them in the game, but roads here have ditches. So they're going to use the ditches to help give them some cover. And then rally. If an enemy unit is broken, let's say Jones here, he's broken, he's running away. You could go to Jones, and he has a commander that allows him to rally, but I don't think that's correct. I don't think you use that to rally Jones. You would use another unit like Early or Beauregard, and then they would go and try to rally those units. Okay, and then that would bring the unit back under control, hopefully, and bring them back into the fight. Doesn't always work. Sometimes it does. And if it does work, you're going to have a worse delay in orders because they're panicked. Okay, as long as they're panicked, there's really not much you can do except pray that they hurry up and get back into line. Okay, that's the best you could do as a commander for them. All right, so that is all their units. Oh, and so if you need to get somewhere tactically just before I leave the commander, and I would get rid of cover, high ground, and roads. Cover, if you're going to attack somebody and they have to use cover, they're going to choose to get to cover. So, for example, here, so you got the Union right here. If I had, let's say, bottom go all the way here, and he has the cover, use cover on, he will walk all the way up to this area right here to where the street is to use the cover, which means that until he fires, these guys are going to take pot shots at him the whole time. So it's something to think about. You may need to be out in the open to attack somebody without getting horrible losses. All right, let's get back to it. So next we have artillery. Oh, we did artillery, excuse me. This button here, that was for if you don't select anybody. That's your build. Okay. And finally, you have stop and you have double time. Obviously to halt and obviously to go faster. And these are all courier options. So they have to be, the courier has to get to the units first. Okay. Let's talk about movement really quickly. All right. So let's take bottom. So if I want to move bottom here, you're going to right click your right mouse button, hold it and drag it to where you want it. Okay, and now you got some options. I can either just press issue orders and then they go automatically. I have to do that because it'll disappear for some reason. So if I come here, and I can either issue orders or cancel those orders, or let's do it again. I can set it to a clock, move at time, or I can move at a signal. So let's do that. Let's do this guy at a signal, and this guy here at a time. So let's make this guy for 8:10. Let's see if this works, okay? Let's start it up. He's getting his orders. He's getting his orders, okay. Do we have couriers going? Oh yeah, there goes the courier. Okay. I'm going to speed up a little bit. Oh yeah, there's his other courier. So it's already 8:13 by the time the message goes, so he already goes. This guy here, his courier's coming in. Let's see what he does. Now that should have been a under order unless I press the wrong button. So it's still glitchy, but I have seen it work better than that. Here, let's try on this guy. Now see, that doesn't work. Let's do that. I think it's only for the commander, if I remember correctly. Oh, yep. My fault, guys. I'm sorry. So it was for the commander. I knew I had that kind of messed up. Now here's an example of what I meant. See how close it's going to get before they start firing? This is the cover I was talking about. It's going to find cover before it does anything. Now I think Longstreet, they kind of break up pretty easily here. U.S. is getting ready. See, look at that. All this time, these guys are already setting up. Oh, that wasn't too bad. Now I'll give the signal. You see that? Everybody moves. So I made a mistake on that, guys. I'm sorry. I'm still learning this game. This game is still... It's still in the experimental phases. I still think it's a good game. See, it's following the road. He's set for roads and high grounds. So that's that. So while they're engaged, let's see if I move him back. No, there's other buttons here too. So there's other buttons here as well to advance, fall back, but for some reason they don't always work. I think it's because it's detached. Okay, he's broken. Again, this is just an example. I know I kind of screwed that up here. Hopefully I can give you a good example of what I mean. There's a few more buttons I want to get done here. So, let me get out of here. It's a little loud. So, anyway, in some cases I'm trying to get these guys to show up with these buttons. But these buttons pop up at certain times. This is a charge. Hold on, let me get that again. Charge, advance. Charge is obviously to charge into the fight while under fire. Advance means to move while under fire. Then you have falling back. Excuse me. These pop away. And then you got retreat. Okay, and they only pop up at certain conditions. I'm trying to get it to work, but it just for some reason it doesn't. But those are the buttons. That's what they're for. And I hope this video helped you guys kind of understand like the UI and what's going on here with these buttons. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you want to see any more videos or you want to see me do a campaign, let me know in the comments section.